I just love that this is happening.
Okay, very good.
Because of my first encounter was really to interview Palestinians.
Oh, thank you.
With a pad of pencil, and I'm writing. So this is like, wow.
It happened.
This is a wall of memories. My son and granddaughter, family, and also Palestine. This is what I look like in 1966 when I was an exchange student in Haifa, staying with an Israeli family. Her father, a survivor of the Holocaust, who drove a truck. That's what I look like when I went to see Atala Mansour, which is a story in and of itself, he told me about the Nakba. This is me in 1998 having a conversation with settlers in Al-Khalil in Hebron, trying to really learn what they thought. And they tested me first they wanted to know my Torah knowledge. And then I started talking to them about what was happening on Shuhada Street. I also met this man who was in Kiryat Arba. And believe it or not, after our conversation, a year later, he left and returned to the United States. He left Kiryat Arba. My friends say, man, I should just go door to door. This was from another delegation that I led. I've led about 15 delegations to Palestine. And part of all of our delegations are giving back to the land. Part of my own education has been to take delegations to Palestine in the West Bank and Gaza, and to let people experience the incredible hospitality and humanity of Palestinians and the reality of the occupation and Israeli militarism on people's lives. I was born into a time in the United States as a sixth-generation Ashkenazi Jew. My great-great-great-grandparents are buried in Easton, Pennsylvania. I was sent to Israel as one of the early Zionist programs of the Reform movement. I was sent in 1966. I spent about 8 months going to high school in Leobeck in Haifa. And immediately up the hill, going from kissing the ground in the air at the airport, running through like, I'm home. You know, I was pretty indoctrinated, kissing the ground, getting on a bus that had a soldier with an automatic weapon leading us onto a military transport bus. I realized I was being indoctrinated, and the message was, it's scary to be a Jew here. I had never felt that in the United States. Nobody accompanied Jewish people around with automatic weapons to keep us safe. But coming to Israel, I was at first confronted with this kind of paradox that somehow there were enemies all around here. On the way up to Jerusalem, Zev Vilnai, the founder of the Israeli tourism movement, who renamed places and created this Jewish landscape, he was not unaware of Palestinian and Muslim and Christian sites, but he created the language and the narrative, sometimes even consecrating places, naming places, that such and such a biblical event happened here, you know? Middle East is a land of tourism, we know that. It's been going on since the Crusades, but so he was part of that colonial narrative. He was the first person who introduced me to the geography of Eretz Yisrael. And as we're going up the hill and he's pointing all these Jewish sites out, we're passing a very large town with lights. And I asked him, Mr. Vilnai, who lives there? And he said, oh, Arabs live there. Arabs live here? Where did they come from? Because I was always taught this Zionist narrative, a land without a people.
For a people.
A people without a land. So who's living here? And he said, oh, don't worry about them. They all left in 1943, 1948. And I was about to say, but you know, there's a whole village of, obviously these people did not leave. And I was very curious. That is kind of what made me unique, I suppose. I was very curious, and I convinced a friend of mine, an Israeli friend of mine, to take the bus from Upper Nazareth, itself a colonial name, obviously, filled with early refugees from Romania and Hungary mostly. We took a bus to Nazareth because she said she knew one Arab. So I put on my fool's hat, the Kova Tembel, it was called, literally a fool's hat. It's kind of an it's a bucket hat. Short shorts and short sleeve shirt with a tablet to meet this person named Atala Mansour, who, as it turned out, was the first Palestinian to write in Hebrew for an Israeli newspaper, Haaretz. I show up at his house, eventually, knock on the door, and we were let in, and he agreed to be interviewed if, he said, the story I tell you, you'll now be accountable for this story. I had my paper and my pen. I felt like I was about to sign a contract that would make me accountable. And he told me the story of the Nakba. I did not know anything about it. I only knew the narrative that was given to me by older people, in which 7 nations attacked the young state of Israel, and people fled. And this was kind of an exchange also for 750,000 Arabic-speaking Jews, some kind of exchange. That's what I had been told. And so there has been a constant pressure always to keep people coming. That's why I was there. I was part of a group of young people, teenagers, taken to Israel to hopefully convince me to move there. You will appreciate this too. I actually had an argument with Ben Gurion. An argument with Ben Gurion, because by the time I met Ben Gurion, well, Atala Mansour told me this story. I felt accountable, and I interviewed 50 Palestinians that year. And of many different walks of life, from Rotary businessmen to people in a village to high school students. I think they were curious. No one had, like me, I had ever interviewed anyone like them. You know, it was confusing for everybody, but this became, for me, a profound methodology of building movements, creating relationships, learning people's stories, learning how to learning about history, getting reliable sources of information, and being a first-hand witness. Because being a first-hand witness is transformative, which is why I joined the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and very soon after that began leading delegations to Palestine, because I knew to build a movement for Palestine solidarity meant putting people in front of Palestinians and on the ground there, and letting them experience, you know, just a whiff of what life is like. Judaism as a religion adopted nonviolence from the rabbinic period, not during the Bible, obviously. But certainly its roots are there. But from the rabbinic period up to 1948, the normative consensus about violence is that Jews shouldn't do it. That this is ungodly. That our whole tradition, the point of our whole tradition, is, of course, to not cooperate with violence. We are not allowed to profit or benefit from anything that was created through the fruits of violence. And we should build sanctuaries for peace. What is religion for if it's not to keep each other safe and to teach us how to make peace? Zionism has taken the place of religion. Israelism has taken the place of Jewish religion. And my own pathway has been to teach Shomeret Shalom. This is my pathway of nonviolence. I created, if you like, a Jewish denomination that is explicitly a community that practices nonviolence. And in that context, we have to practice the 5 stages of repair. If we acknowledge the harm we've done, nothing justifies killing children on anybody's part. And yes, people who are oppressed do have the right to struggle according to the United Nations. Nobody has a right to kill defenseless civilians. No matter who you are, the justice of your struggle. That being said, the violence in this case, in this most recent round, is held by the State of Israel. And it always has been. And it's an apartheid state. That means there is a 2-tier system. And if you travel, you can see it. The territories that Israel governs, it's very complex because Gaza has always been the target of tremendous violence. And I've been visiting there since 2000. Tremendous violence. When I first went there, people were still recovering from Rabin's iron fist policy, when literally soldiers would take the arms of children, put them in a door, and shut it to break their arms, the arms that throw the stone. As long as I've been traveling to Palestine, I've heard repeated stories of people being assassinated and then left to die in the street. I have heard that story so many times that one knows it's a policy. Stories of torture, stories of home. I've had tea on the remaining concrete slabs of people whose relatives were shot by Baruch Goldstein, who murdered 29 Muslims in the Ibrahimi Masjid in Al-Khalil, in Abraham's tomb in Hebron. I've had tea with the survivors whose homes were destroyed by Israel to prevent them from taking acts of revenge. The entire policy of the State of Israel, from its inception in 1948, has been a policy of violence toward Palestinians, from mass atrocity to daily humiliations, like preventing people from going to their final exams by putting up a roadblock, or issues of water, so many things. And in the area known as 1948, the State of Israel and the West Bank and the Gaza, all governed by Israel, there are sectors of Palestinian society that experience less of the violence and have been able to create some kind of life. But they are not allowed to own land. Still, in the State of Israel, Palestinians only own 3% of the land. So this system of this double standard, which is called apartheid because it's legalized, it's in the law, has created a culture of dehumanization which has led to the genocide of the Palestinian people. I mean, there are tens of thousands of Jewish people who are horrified by this and have, especially since October 8th, taken over government buildings, organized, built a movement, are part of student encampments, and have built alliances with Palestinians and African Americans and Indigenous Americans, and, you know, all of us coming together to build a movement of global liberation in the United States and everywhere, actually, and across the world. What I've been engaged in and what I've seen other people engaged with is growing, for instance, Jewish Voice for Peace, which has a very large population of people all over the country in at least 72 chapters. I think that's a low number, actually, who are carrying the mantle of solidarity and putting, so the methodology is one, challenging the narrative of Zionism and challenging the narrative of U.S. militarism. I just, as a single rabbi, have spoken to 4 Buddhist temples, been at Japan Remembrance Day, 12 churches, have worked with a movement here, Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, that has a network of 300 congregations. So I organize in the religious interfaith sector. So my role is to build strength of movement in the interfaith sector and to link our issues together. Because, for instance, the wall that has been built at our southern border and the policies toward immigrants is very much part of the technology that Israel uses and in large part created around surveillance and wall technology. Elbit, the company of Elbit. Another is to expose all the corporations that are profiting from all of this. Another movement piece is to demand arms embargo, and that means having networks of relationships and mobilizing lots and lots of people, from family members to city councils to state and local governments to federal level. So and then to write, I mean, I wrote a book called Replanting the Seeds of Jewish Nonviolence After October 7th. I mean, pretty much anything and everything that I have been trained to do since 1966, I am wielding in relationship with other experienced movement organizers to mobilize our communities and to create the capacity to demand and execute an arms embargo. I don't care if it was like the first line of the Torah, which it's not, you know, or it doesn't matter. All these, it's disgusting to weaponize a cultural legacy of nonviolence to kill children. It's disgusting. It's an abomination. It's completely illegitimate. And no matter who you're quoting, you think you're quoting, I can quote somebody else. I can quote the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Amiel, in 1938, who said, responding to violence with violence is not Jewish. You cannot respond to militarism with militarism or acts of violence. He's clear. The other piece is that all states that are members of the United Nations signed treaties of international law that make them accountable for war crimes. And in this moment, the International Court and every scholar on genocide that exists, including all Israeli scholars of genocide, have said this is genocide. It is genocide because it focuses mass extermination. It is genocide because its focus is extermination of culture. That's cultural genocide. It is ethnic cleansing, so mass depopulation, but in the situation of Gaza, there is nowhere to go. So it is a genocide because it is targeting, assassinating children and whole entire families. There's no way around that. So I don't care who they quote. Anybody who has ever been to Palestine and had even 10 days there, like Ta-Nehisi Coates. For myself, it's been a lot longer, and since 1966, it's obvious. Very emotionally difficult to confront one's own self when harm is caused. It's profoundly difficult. That is why our traditions have methodologies of repair, because we know it's difficult. The first step in repair is to acknowledge the harm. That's on the perpetrator of the harm. There is hope that once you begin that process, you can be part of a culture of repair rather than a culture of violence, oppression, which it doesn't work. Look at us. We're still here. I'm sitting on a couch in the year 5785, and Palestinians will survive this, and they will continue to be a beautiful people. So if we want to carve a future of hope for our children and our children's children, we have to acknowledge this harm. We have to feel accountable for the harm, understand how we have contributed to the harm. That's very difficult to do, but it's a mitzvah. It's a religious obligation. We have to name those harms, and we cannot name the harms without hearing Palestinians themselves name those harms. And they have, and there's a very long list of them. We have to then engage in reparations. Reparations, first and foremost, is stop the harm. Stop the harm. And then there's rehabilitation, compensation, and restoration. Restoration is the right of return. So is rehabilitation and compensation. Until the right of return is established, we will be accountable for tshuva, for repair. And only when Palestinians say, Khalas, you've done it. Hey, we are repaired. We're still going to cry about it every year, but we're repaired. And I feel like the tens of thousands of Jewish people all over the world who have gone into the street, they are part of this culture of repair. And I mean,
well, thank you so much, Rabbi.
It's like Martin Luther King. I see the mountaintop. We all want to see that mountaintop. We do. We want to see the mountaintop. Probably won't in my lifetime. But we have to continue to be the hope. We cannot make a condition on that. We have to be that hope. That is what we can do. Many people saw the end of apartheid. I saw the acceptance of women rabbis. In my time, I was one of the, one of the first 7. I saw that change happen. We Our children will stand on our shoulders, and we want to give them really a firm foundation to continue to heal from this work. No one can see the future, but we have to believe and be the peace that we want. There's no other way. Yes.
So this is
This isn't here, but it was here.
I'm so glad you were here. Thank you for your talk.
thank you so much.
This is an atonement altar. This is the day we try to create a culture of repair for the harms that we've caused. And this year, everyone in this community, in this room, is thinking about genocide against Palestinian people in our name. And so we created an altar, simple, where people could write pledges of what they hope they will do this coming year in behalf of ending the genocide of Palestine, and to keep a permanent altar, a permanent space in synagogues to remind us on a daily basis that this work is not going to be done soon, and so we must remain faithful to the acts of repair. And so this is a fast day.